Ladies and gentlemen, Woody Allen.
Thank you. This is really, for me, one of my rare appearances outside of Greenwich Village in Manhattan, where I come from in New York. And I went formally, this was some years ago, to New York University, which is in Greenwich Village. And when I first started working, I was working at a place called the Bitter End, a coffee house in New York. An amusing place. And I used to see kids that I went to college with years ago who grew up and got married and now are happy, presumably. And my first week working, I saw a girl that I knew from college many years ago, an arch liberal at college, very, very arch and enormously liberal. Very black clothes and pierced ears, you know, really involved with herself. And she's married now. She's settled down and happy. She's had her ears filled in by a doctor, you know. She's practicing with her husband what they refer to as rhythmic birth control. And apparently, she has not been able to keep a beat. She's densely populated. And, you know, also, I don't originally come from the village. I come from Brooklyn originally. I come from Orthodox Jewish parents that live in Brooklyn. Or they were, I should say, Orthodox Jewish, but then they built in my neighborhood what's known as a Reform synagogue out of chromium. They furnished it with Danish modern furniture, you know, and hanging lamps. And they made it very simple for you. You can drive in now. Pray by mail, you know. The last thing I heard was that they were going to give up worshiping altogether there, you know, and just meet once a year on the high holidays and hold a fashion show. I live now, I would say, I think in a rich neighborhood. I live across the street from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is this fabulous museum of art. And when I was younger, I used to hang out a lot at the museum in search of a meaningful social relationship of some. I used to look for girls at the museum. And I saw on the wall once a nude by Rubens, but a real succulent nude. A naked huntress stabbing to death a warthog. And I got very emotionally involved with the painting, you know, and two guards had to restrain me. Tried to lick some of the oil off the canvas. So I was thinking to myself, at that time, where is it that I could meet the kind of girl that would pose for that type picture? And in my neighborhood, there's an art supply shop that deals in offbeat things. And I run down there, and I get the name of an artist model off the wall. And I call her up. And I came on very strong like an artist. With it. You know, I used a lot of very artistic terms like brush, I said, and easel. I was just adorable. And we agreed on a price, you know, and hung up. And I got all dressed up in my smock and beret, you know, and little Harvey's Bristol cream on the hair. You know? I'm too much what I want to be. And I waited there. An hour later, there's a knock on my door, and standing there is this fabulous woman, but really sensational. And I let her in quickly, you know, and I locked the door with my police lock immediately. And I said to her, take off your clothes right away, because I don't know much about art, but I know what I like. She took off everything, very professional, and posed. And I began to shake. You know, that's my thing, I shake all the time. I'm not good in those kind of situations, you know. I'm perspiring audibly, you know. She's standing there in front of me, majestic. And I took my piece of paper and my charcoal pencil, and I went up to her, and I got into a little trouble with her because I tried to trace her. I have a love story where I come out good. I'm always telling love stories on television and never winning. A long time ago, let me start this at the beginning because it's très romantic. I was at City Center in New York. I was watching a ballet. And I'm not a ballet fan at all, but they were doing The Dying Swan, And there was a rumor that some bookmakers had drifted into town from upstate New York, you know, and that they had fixed the ballet. Apparently there was a lot of money bet on the Swan to live. And I'm there in my great Italian suit. I had on a thin, tight, suffocating suit, you know, with a lot of buttons up the front like this, you know. Both my legs go into one pant on it down like that, you know. I'm just aces. And I see a girl in the box. And my weak spot is women. You should know this about me. I always think someday they're going to make me a birthday party and wheel out a tremendous birthday cake, and a giant naked woman is going to leap out of the cake and hurt me and leap back in. Go up to this girl, and I talked to her, and I was very good with her. She was a brilliant girl. She was a Bennington College girl. She was studying at Bennington to be a woman male nurse in a 4-year program. And she was living with, when I was dating her, a painter, a post-impressionist, mock, pseudo-psychotic, neo-quasi-cretin painter who had, in a burst of artistic integrity, when I tried to cut off his ear in her apartment. You know? Unfortunately, he had tried it with an electric razor. When you have to do this for a half an hour. Depressing. She was a swinger. She had a little brother when she was younger, 8 years old, and her parents sent the kid to military school. And while he was there, he stole something. Jam. And they wanted to do things right. They caught him. It was military school. So they held a court-martial there. And they found the kid guilty. And they shot him. They returned to his parents half the tuition fee, you know. All the name tapes went back and everything. And the rubber sheet, you know, and all that. Meanwhile, I was running amok with his sister. His sister was a destructive, primitive blonde. A killer. We used to go up to her apartment late at night, and all her beatnik friends would be sitting cross-legged on each other there. We'd be trying to make opium out of poppies given out by veterans on street corners. We used to plug in her $12.50 hi-fi set with a teakwood needle, you know. Put on the record albums of Marcel Marceau. And she killed me. Every time I tell this story, I'm embarrassed because I was what you would call, I think, intellectually unworthy of her. I was thrown out of college. I think I mentioned that before once on television. I cheated. I was the worst algebra student in college. And on the final test, I sat next to Alvin Beckman, who was this very bright kid. I got a mirror. I hid it in the palm of my hand. I got all the answers off Beckman's paper in my mirror. I got them all backwards. He got 94, I got 49. It threw me out immediately. And when I was thrown out of college, it's a curious thing. That was, at that time, I went in, for the first time in my life, I think, to my psychoanalysis, which I always discuss publicly. I was in group analysis. For those of you who don't know group psychoanalysis, it's a group of neurotics that meet a couple of times a week and sit around in a room and twitch or something, you know. An analyst presides over you, and like you raise your hand and say, I feel short and unloved. And the doctor says, Mr. Allen here feels short and unloved. How many feel he is? Hands? They all raise their hand, you know. And it's unanimous. I'm short and unloved, you know. It cost me $20 to have that reaffirmed each week by the And I went. I was very good. And nothing happened. Nobody was cured. This was years ago. Last year, the group broke up. I get in the mail an engraved invitation. Class reunion. The old group analysis group. All the neurotics came back, all the nail-biters and bedwetters, you know, it was a catered affair. Fabulous thing. And in the interim, 2 of the kids in the group had gotten married, and this is adorable, because it's what you'd call a mixed marriage or an intermarriage, in that the girl was paranoid, and the boy was schizophrenic. And there was a big conflict about which way they would bring up the children. Anyhow, the girl finally broke up with me. She was too brilliant for me, and I was not equal to it. She had won a scholarship to secretarial school, and the government sent her to Switzerland to study typing, you know. That was it. I'm self-educated myself. I taught myself to type by memorizing the keys of the typewriter. First line is Cordy Up. Second line is astaficatical. The third is zixclubnum. But they rarely come up in letter writing. I tried to learn Spanish from record albums for a year and a half at the wrong speed. I spoke a fairly torpid Castilian. Had to be goosed up to communicate with other Spaniards. Listen to this. In my entire life, I have never had difficulty with the cops. I have had difficulty with the cops. I haven't had difficulty with the cops. I was once sitting home in my house, and a lot of cars pulled up around the house, and they shined in searchlights. And I heard a voice over a loudspeaker say, "We have your house surrounded. This is the New York Public Library." They wanted the books back, you know. A little librarian was lobbing grenades over the house. You know. I came out with my hands up, you know, kicking the books ahead of me. Like. They took me down to the main branch in New York, and they took away my glasses for a year. However, living as I do in our rich neighborhood in New York, we get robbed all the time there. It's a very popular thing in Manhattan. You know, my apartment was robbed around 4 times in 2 years. And I didn't know what to do about it, you know. They just broke in and took things and would leave or anything. And finally I put on my door a little red and white sticker that said, "We gave." I figured that would end it, you know. But it didn't, because a man in my building, Mr. Russo, was held up late at night. 2 very big guys got him in the lobby with a bottle and a stick, you know, and they wanted all this cash. And Russo, like a jerk, tried to sign for it for tax purposes, you know. They hit him a tremendous shot across the frontal lobe, you know, a real smack in the head. And he fell to the lobby in a fetal position, you know. And he lay there till his lease ran out, you know, just like that. And he's never been the same since the blows to the head, you know. He smiles a lot now. He laughs out of context occasionally. He's not as alert as the average tree stump, you know. Everybody in the building panicked. They said, "I'm small, and I should build myself up in case I get into trouble. I could defend myself." So I was petrified at that time. I went to Vic Tanny's health club in the United States, and I lifted, and I bent, and I squatted. And nothing happened to me at all. Nothing grew or anything. It was really dismal. And I figured it's ridiculous. Why don't I just forget about it, give Vic Tanny the cash, and ask him if he'll walk me home nights. There is, however, in my neighborhood a kid named Leon, a little weird kid, and Leon takes karate lessons. And Leon is always walking around with his hand cocked at a right angle like this, you know? And everyone said I should learn judo because I'd be an absolute animal if I knew it. What are you laughing at, lady? But judo to me has always been a thing of the bigger your opponent is, the bigger the beating he's going to give you. That's the way I feel about it. The Japanese lost the war, you know, and don't want to get involved. Lived in fear. Then my good friends told me in the back of Esquire magazine, you can send away for a fountain pen that shoots tear gas. A great fountain pen, and it secretes a gaseous billow. You know, it can disorient a dog if necessary. Really a thing. I send away for it. It comes in a plain brown wrapper. Unscrew it, put in the tear gas cartridges, clip it in my breast pocket, and I go out one night. This was a long time ago. Some friends of mine were having a surprise autopsy. And I'm dancing, you know, really sensational. Coming home by myself, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black, I'm all alone, and standing in my lobby is a Neanderthal man, you know. Eyebrow ridges and hairy knuckles like this, you know. He had just learned to walk erect that morning, I think. Came to my house in search of the secret of fire. A tree swinger in the lobby. A mouth breather looking at me like this, you know. So quickly I took my watch out and I dangled it in front of him because they're mollified by shiny objects. You know, but he ate it. I backed off, pulled out my tear gas pen, I unscrewed the top, I pressed the trigger, and some ink trickled on my shirt. I made a mental note to call Esquire and tell them that I'm standing in the lobby, 2 o'clock in the morning, with the product of a broken home, you know. I had a fountain pen in my hand. I tried writing on him with it, you know. He came to me and he started to tap dance on my windpipe. Very quickly, I lapsed into the old Navajo Indian trick of screaming and begging. He got my head and he started to remove my wisdom teeth, you know? And I'm hitting him and I'm telling him he's the product of an economic squeeze, you know? And I offered to send him to holiday camp if he wanted. And finally some cops, I would say 6 cops came in and they saw what was going on. And they took his side. I get into an amazing amount of physical encounters for someone my size. About 6 months ago, I had my shoes shined against my will. Tremendous guy said to me, "I'm shining your shoes." "Yes, you are," I said. He did. Gave me a good shine, as a matter of fact, but they were suede shoes. Across the street from me in New York is Central Park. And Central Park is really populated by Neanderthals. Really bad guys swing through the park at odd hours, you know, dismantling social workers as they go. They unscrew the little blonde girls to see what makes them benevolent, you know? And every summer, a guy by the name of Joseph Papp does a thing called Shakespeare in the Park. Very virile outdoor Shakespeare in the middle of Central Park for nothing. And they were doing Hamlet. And in the middle of production of Hamlet, these 6 guys come through the park with the black leather jackets and boots and zippers and acne and everything. Really. They came upon the production of Hamlet, and they grabbed Polonius, you know. They held his head under the duck pond in the park. They got Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, you know. They broke their glasses. The guy who was playing Hamlet felt obligated to do something about it, you know. He was the star of the show, but... you can't come on too strong with those guys when you're wearing leotards. Harkin Prithee doesn't cut any ice with the Uptown Thumpers, you know. What finally happened was they grabbed Ophelia, and fortunately she turned out to be a cop. Listen, I must think in terms of breaking for a short while, but I will be back with my friend and guest, Danny Meehan, in very quick time, so please stay here, and I have more stories and like that. Thank you. When I was asked to do this show, I wanted not to do it alone because I didn't want to stand up there and talk for half an hour without any entertainment. And I called my friend in the United States, a very expensive call, and I had him come over here because the show paid. And he's a great personal friend of mine, and I've worked with him several times, and he's really, really a treat. So please welcome Mr. Danny Meehan.
At home, you're cozy, secure, and snug. But friend, look at the hole you've dug. You think you're smart, but you're headed for your defeat. If you want to live life, get out and walk in the street. The street has danger at every turn. But just think of the things you learn. If you want to get warm, you gotta go near the heat. And if you want to live life, get out and walk in the street. The street is where all the good folks go. And they meet with all the good friends they know. Well, it's such a treat to beat your feet Cheer up, remember the whole thing's free. You love yourself for being so indiscreet. So if you want to live life, get out and walk in a, get out and walk in a, get out and walk in a street. That TV set's been keeping you in your seat. But if you want to live life, if you want to live life, if you want to live life, get out and walk in the street.
A lot of people think I had him on just because we're both Irish. I shot a moose once. I didn't mean to break it to you that way. I shot a moose. Was hunting upstate New York in the woods. I tied the moose onto the fender of my car, and I drove back home. But I didn't realize that the bullet had not penetrated the moose, but had just creased its scalp, knocking it unconscious. I'm driving home along the highway, and I'm going through a tunnel. The moose woke up. So I'm driving with a live moose on my fender. And the moose is signaling for a turn. And there's a law in New York State against driving with a conscious moose Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. All right, I don't know what to do. I'm panicky. I realize some friends of mine are having a costume party. I'll go with the moose. I'll ditch him at the party. It would be my responsibility. So I drive to the party. I go up to the front door. The moose is next to me. I knock on the front door. The host comes to the door. I say, hello. You know the Solomons. We go in. The moose starts to mingle. Goes to the buffet table. Some guy tries to sell him insurance. The moose is doing great, meanwhile, you know. He scored. 12 o'clock comes. They judge who's got the best costume of the night. First prize goes to the Berkowitzes. A married couple dressed in a moose suit. The moose comes in second. The moose is furious. He and the Berkowitzes lock antlers in the living room. They knock each other unconscious. Now I figure I'll get rid of them for good. I pile them on the fender and speed up to the woods. But I got the Berkowitzes. I'm driving along with two Jewish people on my fender. And there's a law in New York State. The next morning, the Berkowitzes wake up in the woods in a moose suit. Mr. Berkowitz is shot, stuffed, and mounted at the New York City Golf Club. And the joke is on them because they don't allow Jews. Thank you very much for laughing at me. I'm checking. I don't know how much time I do have left, actually, but I have time, I think, for almost no more. This, incidentally, you should see it while I have it out. I flash it all the time because it makes me look jazzy and elegant. And it's an antique and gold. My grandfather, on his deathbed, sold me this watch. Used to have my wife's picture in here, picture of her face, but the watch kept stopping. I want to show you something before I say goodnight to everybody. This is my album, my record album, and I want you to go into stores and ask for this. And if the dealer doesn't have it, go back at night with a can of black paint and paint a swastika on the store. It has all these stories and more. It was recorded live in Chicago, and it's a few pence or whatever it is, and it's a good record, and I'm amusing on it, and it's unbreakable and lasts for life.